From the city of brotherly love, this is Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser.
You just arrived to the newest episode of Shark Bite Biz. I'm your rockstar wannabe host, David Strausser, and this is your place to learn how to grow a business during complete global chaos. As always, this episode is brought to you by our amazing partner and SAP Platinum Global Partner, Seidor. That's S-E-I-D-O-R. If your business is ready to move off of QuickBooks or some other antiquated solution, maybe start automating your business processes and really just break through the barriers preventing growth, give us a ring. Let us help you out. Reach out to me directly or reach out to Seidor.com. Mention Shark Bite Biz and we'll hook you up. Now let's get back to today's episode. We're going old school, but yet still new school. You've heard of all the great minds out there, motivational speakers, people like Zig Ziglar, Jeffrey Gitomer, Neil Rackman, Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, even Shiny Unsol, who's been on the show, 200th episode last season, was one of the first interviews that we did when we launched the podcast. But what about Dale Carnegie? Again, one of the greatest minds out there, but a lot of people still kind of think of him in the past sense, not the present sense. And that's what we're going to show you today. And boy, man, do we have a story to tell. It is a great story of personal growth, professional growth, and ultimately how that can lead to business growth. So who do we have today? None other than Joe Hart, the CEO of Dale Carnegie. Joe Hart is a renowned expert in organizational culture and has been featured regularly in publications such as Newsweek and Rolling Stone. He draws his insights from the teachings of Dale Carnegie and serves as the president and CEO of Dale Carnegie Training, one of the world's oldest and largest training companies with a heritage dating back 110 years and with a presence in over 80 countries. So hey, without further delay, let's get the author of the book Take Command right here by my side, Joe Hart, right on in here.
Business strategy.
Joe, welcome to Shark Bite Biz. You, my friend, you just became Shark Bait.
All right. Thanks, David. Great to be with you today.
No, honored to have you. Someone with your resume. It's always incredible that people like you actually want to come on this show. It surprises me every time, but somehow we get rock stars like you in here every week, it seems like. So very honored to have you on the show.
Well, you're very kind. You're doing great work. And I know you've got over 200 episodes. So, you're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. Very, very humbled by that. So we got a tradition here. Very first question out of the gate, we ask everybody, doesn't matter how famous they are or how non-famous they are, they all got to answer it because it intrigues me how people describe themselves. It's one of my, curiosities about being a human is, who are you? What do you do for a living? How'd you get there? What kind of career transformation did you have to land there? Whatever you want to tell us, basically in a nutshell, what makes Joe?
Well, thank you for asking, David. I've got to tell you, I think I've got one of the greatest, jobs on the planet. I'm just so honored and humbled to be the CEO and the president of Dale Carnegie. This is a company that's 111 years old this year. It's founded by Dale Carnegie. We've got 208 operations in 86 countries, franchisees and teams all over the world. So just to be a part of this organization is an honor. And honestly, as I look back, at my life and I think about how, you go through different experiences and sometimes, you don't connect the dots until you get to a certain point. You look back, you're like, oh my gosh, the dots really connect. And for me, just, maybe I'll give you a little bit of background. I started out, I grew up in a family, my mom, my dad, my brother, my parents are very supportive. My dad always believed that, and he talked about life is about personal growth, talked about Dale Carnegie when I was younger. My mother took a 1965 Dale Carnegie program. So I grew up hearing about Dale Carnegie. And, when I became a lawyer, my goal coming out of law school was to join a big law firm and go on a partner track and make a lot of money. And that's what my goal was. And then I took a Dale Carnegie class in 1995. I was in my 20s. And part of what that program did is it challenged me on my vision, and Dale Carnegie programs are about really bringing out, helping people at breakthroughs and bringing out their best and so forth. And so when I thought about my life, I said, I'm a good lawyer. I'm not necessarily a happy lawyer. So the course ultimately prompted me to leave the practice of law and go into business. But the other thing it did was, it made me really think about my relationships with other people and how I was interacting with other people. And, if I'm going to be, completely transparent, I think at that time in my life, young lawyer, maybe cocky, prickly, but I in that program, I just really learned about the value and the importance of interacting with people in a different way, in a more effective way, in a way that appreciates and values and respects and listens. It's not all about me. It's about listening to other people. So I left the practice of law. I went into business. I worked for a real estate company, large, publicly traded mall development company for a couple of years. Great company, loved it. But ultimately then started an e-learning company. And that was a tough thing to do, to leave a phenomenal job that I loved to start a company from nothing. But that company actually was an e-learning company. My first client became Dale Carnegie. And I'd gone to Dale Carnegie. I said, look, your programs have changed my life. And I've developed the system to help reinforce what you teach in the classroom. And so ultimately I took that to Dale Carnegie, and we developed programs in the early 2000s in multiple languages that were used around the world. I had other clients. I built and sold that company in 2005, and I became the president of another company for about 10 years. And in 2014, I was reached out to by someone in the organization who said, the CEO is retiring. You should put your hat in the ring, for the role. And I oh my gosh. I mean, this is a company that has had such a huge impact on my life. My wife, I encouraged her to take the program. 2 of my 6 kids who were teens, I'd encourage them to take the program. All 6 of my kids have now taken the program. But that's what I'm saying. So, when I ultimately entered that process, it was a very rigorous selection process. And to become the CEO of this company that has had just such a huge impact on me and my family, it's almost like, David, the kid who grows up watching the New York Yankees, and all of a sudden he finds himself on the pitcher's mound. You know what I mean? I'm leading this global company, and it's been a tremendous honor and responsibility, and I'm just really grateful for it.
That is an incredible story. And the first thing I get out of it is you talk about connecting the dots. And when you say connecting the dots, I mean, it started when you were a kid with your parents pushing you like, hey, Dale Carnegie, read this, take this course, stuff like that. And then, reintroduced it with the e-learning, and ultimately you end up becoming CEO. It's kind of crazy how throughout your life, you kept getting introduced at certain points to Dale Carnegie to where now you're leading the company. I mean, that's going full circle.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny too, because as I think about even those different experiences along the way in isolation, you don't think about anything necessarily bigger. I remember when I was leading that e-learning company in the early 2000s, and it was absolutely gut-wrenching and hard starting a new business after the dot-com crash, after 9/11. And, and at the same time, a lot of what helped me get through that were Dale Carnegie's ideas, how to influence and influence people, how to stop worrying and start living. So that helped me in that company. And then when I'm leading Dale Carnegie through COVID, and that was a daunting time, David, because, our entire business in January 2020 was in-person, face-to-face. And all of a sudden, over those following months, our entire business more or less shut down. We transformed the business completely. We flipped it to live online model, highly interactive, very successful with our customers and the results we were getting.
How long did it take you to actually transform it to do it overnight? I mean, did you have like, hey, this is on our roadmap and all we're doing is accelerating it? Or was it like, hey, we need to come up with something and you had to kind of flip a switch?
It was more of the accelerating, but it was a massive acceleration. So what we had was, we had started in North America, a part of what we were doing was live online training delivery. And we'd done that for maybe almost 10 years. But it was really very small, maybe 5% of our business. And most of our franchisees were not really using that. They weren't certified to deliver digitally and that type of thing. So in 4 months, really from January through May, we certified about 1,000 trainers worldwide. And keep in mind, the Dale Carnegie programs in the classroom are just tremendously interactive. They are, you're up on your feet, you're doing different kinds of activities and so forth. So I think that some of our trainers even were skeptical. How in the world can you do this, in a online environment with a Zoom type of thing?
Well, I do ERP and, enterprise resource planning, SAP, is what I do. And when COVID hit, everybody was skeptical, like, how am I going to get someone to write me a 500,000 or $1 million check, just through a couple digital phone calls, you know what I mean? And what we found is, like, if you do it right, it's totally able to be done. And it has, like, it slowed down business a little bit initially, I think, because everybody was kind of like in the what's going to happen mode. But once people got over the shock and awe of everything shutting down, then it was almost just like business as usual, except we're doing it like we are now on a Zoom call instead of being face to face.
Yeah, it was definitely paradigm shifting, I think, for all of us, right? I mean, all of a sudden most people went from working in an office to working from home. We started to realize that we could effectively connect online and conduct business. And like you said, I mean, virtual selling, in virtual training, all of these different kinds of things. So, but, I still think that for our team around the world, what really impressed me was their resilience and agility and the fact that they embraced this new world. And we took it to our clients, and our clients were open to it too. And, our companies come back, thank goodness, stronger, faster, more competitive, even more than we were before the pandemic. So, to your point, I think that acceleration was really important, and it enabled us as an organization. If we hadn't had COVID, it would have been a lot harder to bring about the same kind of just structural change in terms of our products and deliveries and that type of thing.
Yeah, we've had Soledad O'Brien on the show, and I bring her up every so often because she was on episode, I think it's 91 or 92. So probably like season 2, season 3, and it was still in the middle of COVID and a lot of lockdowns and stuff like that. And she was saying, it's hard to say there's anything good that happened with COVID, but there are benefits of what did happen on the technological side of things, like what you were just describing right there. And that's something that did, stuck with me as far as, it is true. It's hard to, equate good with COVID, but it did push, the country and the world to a degree off a digital cliff to where we realized, hey, we were being old grumpy fools as far as just being stuck in our ways, doing things because this is the way that it's always been done, when a lot of times there's a better way to do it. I mean, I can do many, many more meetings virtually than I can when I was visiting people on site, because it's like, I got to go to this point, especially when I lived in LA. I was pretty much limited to maybe 1 to 2 appointments a day. Like, okay, I'll visit you in the morning, you in the afternoon, and pray to God there's no accidents or construction in between, only way I would be able to make it. But before we go any further, let's take one step back, because you gave an awesome, incredible origin story about you. I totally love that and connecting the dots. But there's probably many people out there wondering, Dale Carnegie, what is that? Why don't you explain what Dale Carnegie is at a high level so that people that don't know do know what we're talking about?
Yeah, so Dale Carnegie is what I'd call a human performance company. You think about, people might say it's training, but really it is about how do you help people develop so that they can perform at a higher level. And that might mean around communications or self-confidence or interpersonal skills or leadership or stress and worry. It could be a whole range of things.
What about NLP, out of curiosity? Does NLP fit into that at all for you?
That's not really something that we teach. I know that, that's out there, and there are some people that do that more of as a technique. I think, what we are is we're much more, I'd say, principle based, in the sense that what we're teaching people are principles and ideas and strategies for how to interact with people more effectively, how to create a better culture and so forth. We do have sales programs, we've got leadership programs. If you said you want to become a really powerful presenter, we've got programs around that.
No digital paper cuts.
That's true.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that's a wonderful overview. And one thing, again, circling back to the connecting the dots. Okay. So hindsight is 2020. That's the cliche, right? Knowing that hindsight is 2020, connecting the dots. Okay. How are you able to take command of your future to be able to kind of connect those dots a little bit faster?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you touched on something a few minutes ago, which is maybe the most important answer to that question, which is mindset. If we've got the wrong mindset, we're grumpy, or we're just like, hey, I can't do this, then we're limiting our not only our potential, we're limiting what we're going to be able to do, what we will do. And so, one of the things we talk about in Take Command, and the book Take Command is really it's about being intentional. So we talk about taking command of your thoughts and your emotions, right? I mean, not letting our thoughts and our emotions rule us, but saying, hey, I want to be courageous and resilient and confident and those kinds of things. I don't want to be cowardly. I don't want to be fearful or insecure and let those things rule. So, or taking command of our relationships. How do I develop really enduring, strong relationships, whether it's at work or in my family or in the community? And that is take command of my future. So, taking command of what's the vision you have for yourself. One of the things we looked at in the book was that many people, the number one thing that people regret on their deathbed is that they didn't live courageously. They lived the life, that maybe somebody else wanted them to live. They didn't take the chances. They didn't take the risks. They weren't bold enough.
They lived too safe of a life. They took the safe path instead of the what if path. And I honestly, to be full transparent, and my viewers know this, but I changed jobs at the beginning of this year. I had the safe path, all-star performer at my previous company, total rock star. My job was probably as safe as it could be without me doing something to totally blow it up and mess it up myself. And I left that for a huge, huge upside potential, nearly $1 billion company. Globally, they are, but they were having trouble in the US and we're doing a major reboot. And, to me, when I was talking with my previous company, when I was leaving, it was they were like, but you're really good. The money's good. I'm like, it's not about the money. It's not about title chasing. It's about the what if factor of being able to do what we are currently doing now with Seder USA. I think that's one of the moments that would have haunted me for the rest of my life if I would have took that safe pass. I'm 39. I'll be 40 in 4 days. So about to enter my 40s. So it was the perfect time for me to take that type of risk, because if I fall flat, I will land on my feet somewhere. But all indications are right now, we're not going to fall flat. It's going to go right up.
Well, you said it's the perfect time. And yet that's part of the mindset too. I mean, because some people might say, well, this isn't the perfect time. This is the thing. And Dale Carnegie talked about this, right? That the most important thing we need to do is to think about our thoughts and manage our thoughts, because you could have two people who are in the same situation that you were in. Two people in that same situation, one person just says, I'm just not going to do it. I can't leave this. I need the security. And then they go forward and maybe they regret that later on. So, how do we really start to pay attention to our thoughts and flip the negative thoughts, those limiting thoughts, the undermining thoughts that basically are telling us you can't do it, you shouldn't do it, loser, whatever it is,
That's why I moved from my Pennsylvania town. When I was 18, I grew up in a small city in, Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. Anybody that knows Yuengling beer, it's where Yuengling is made, one of their, claims to fame. But anyways, growing up, I always heard my grandfather, my dad, other people boy, get your head out of the clouds. That's not going to happen. Trying to set more of a realistic reality for me. And I just got tired of hearing, no, I can't. I'm like, why can't I do this? Why can't that happen? Why can't I do this or that? And ultimately, it led me to fleeing the country, literally. And I moved to Tijuana, Mexico, where I rebuilt a new life from scratch. And it's still going. And it's been I mean, yeah, Great Recession. It was hard. It was, pretty rough couple years for us. But outside of those couple years, I mean, it's been mostly upside.
Well, I mean, that's great that it has worked out as well as it has.
But it's only because I took myself out of that situation of that limiting, being limited, like you were saying, where everybody's telling you, no, that's crazy. You can't do that. I think it's because I took myself out of that environment and put me in an environment that was more open, like you can do anything.
Well, I mean, if you have that mindset, then you open yourself to those things. And a lot of times, we encourage people, take yourself out of the equation. If you were to look at somebody else, not you, who's in the situation, what advice would you give to that person? But, many times we're at that. I went through 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, passed the bar exam, and then made a decision to leave the practice of law. And people would say, "Why are you doing that? You spent all this money on law school. Why?" And what are you going to do if it doesn't work? And it's like, well, I'll figure something out. And the same thing. I started a business, and it was just like it was terrifying leaving a phenomenal job that I loved to start a business. It's like, well. But I think, David, all of us get to these points in our lives where there are things that would undermine us. And you know what? Maybe if my heart was, I don't want to start the business, I want to stay in this, that's fine. But to your example, you said you'd have regretted it the rest of your life if you hadn't done it. So that's where we don't want to be. We don't want just our fears, our limiting mindsets to kind of keep us from moving forward to do the things that really are meaningful or that would be meaningful for us in our lives.
One of the cliches I have, something that I say on the show quite frequently, not every episode, but every couple episodes, and I say it to my sales reps all the time, is that I feel a lot of businesses and people, to an extent too, they're too short-sighted. They're only thinking about the now, the instant gratification, I want some revenue right now, but they don't look at things holistically. So what I preach is, yes, you've got to stay focused and you've got to do action now and execute. Keep one eye on the present, but you also need to keep one eye on the future, because the decisions that you make today are going to affect where you're going to be tomorrow and whether or not you hit that goal or that 5-year plan or whatever it is. How true do you think that is? Is that a wrong mentality? Am I right in preaching that as one of my core ethos of what I believe in? I mean, give me your take.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is, you're grounded in what you need to do, and you're also thinking about who you are and what's important to you. And certainly, the third part of our book is about take command of your future and your vision. And part of that means what are your values? What do you define your purpose as being? What are the things that really you find fulfilling? So, to your sales reps, yeah, you've got some things you need to do in the day to day, and you should do those. And still keeping in mind, not just for your sales rep, for any of us, is this fulfilling me, and am I aligned to my ultimate vision and the things that I want to do? Because what I don't want, and this is one of the reasons why I love the practice of law, a fine way to make a living. Many great lawyers who are good friends of mine. It's just I didn't want to look back at 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years in the rearview mirror saying, gosh, that's how I devoted my life, because every single day I live is one less day that I have. So how do I maximize that? I think what I hear you saying is, yeah, you need to have a sense of where you are and also where you're going.
Right. It is, because right now we're in Q2 as we record this episode, and I am, we're talking about, okay, what deals are we closing in Q2? That's an out. Okay. But we have simultaneous conversations because, people that work at our level, I expect them to be able to multi-thread, to be able to do simultaneous tasks at a high level. So what are you doing to build up your Q3 pipeline and get that ready? What are you doing for your Q4? And what's your long-term as far as getting partnerships, referral partnerships, people that can bring you leads in 2024 to make sure that you always have a full pipeline from 2024 on? They're the type of discussions that I have with our business development team and net new name sales team. And it seems to be working, because Q1, when I started here, we had one opportunity for the small business ERP business one. Now in Q2, we're up to about 15, 16 opportunities. You look at Q3 and you got about half of that already, but that doesn't count new ones that'll come in between now and the end of September. That doesn't count ones from Q2 that will push to Q3. So you can see it. building up and progressing, and you start seeing opportunities pop up throughout the whole rest of this year already because of having that type of mindset. So that's why I view that it's important in a business sense.
Well, you remind me of a sales mentor that I once had analogize sales to an aircraft carrier, right? You've got some planes that are landing right now. You've got some that are going to be coming in here in a little bit. And you got some that are way off in the distance. You can't even see them. You need to be thinking about those planes that can be coming in. And, there definitely is a cycle and a pipeline to sales.
I'm going to steal that analogy.
You can use it. I did.
Yeah. So that is brilliant. And I think I'm going to use that at my next sales meeting. So one thing we all deal with is difficult people. Okay. I'm sure you've dealt with a few difficult people. I've had difficult people throughout my career, and I'm kind of, I don't want to boast, but I do feel that with my personality, my understanding of things, of where things are. I mean, look at our climate for our country, the culture in the country. It's very divided. And I can win people over as far as friendships with anything, anywhere. I'm one of those people that know just enough about everything that makes me a little bit dangerous. And I usually find a little crack to get in. But I did find out that I have accepted that I cannot win everybody over. There's always going to be somebody I can't win over. And when I run into that, that's where I turn it over to somebody else. Okay, you know what? You run with this, because no matter what I do, this is not going anywhere. How do you win difficult people over? And with my story that I just told you, is that a reality? Is that truth?
Well, it's certainly truth that, it's the proverbial, you can't please all the people all the time, right? And I think it's wise that when you get to that point that you say, this is maybe beyond my skill set, or maybe you're better at this, better suited for this person and so forth. I think about difficult people. And by the way, I think of people who are hard to work with, or people who are prickly, or people who are just rub you the wrong way. And it can happen on social media. It can happen in your family. It can happen at work. And, the first thing I always like to think about is, am I the difficult person? Because sometimes I can be the difficult person, right? So we need to have that level of introspection.
I can be difficult too. I hold a high standard, and, it is what it is, but I get people to agree to that standard by not forcing them to accept my standard, but instead reversing it and getting them to come up with the standard that they're agreeing to, which is the standard I want them to come with. So they feel like they came up with it. That's one of my tricks, I guess you can call it, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think on the difficult person thing, though, one is, we should always be introspective and think. Sometimes the issue with the person we perceive as difficult, it might even be, what's our role in that, and how do we respond to that, right? Because a lot of times, we have a story in the book about a woman who's a friend of mine, and we were talking, and she's telling me about this person at work, and how this person at work is, she's undermining me, and she's doing that. I said, well, what was she doing? What was she saying? And she said, well, I was working on this social media campaign, and she's asking me if I ever thought about this color and so forth. I said, well, was she rolling her eyes? Was she putting you down? She's like, none of those things. And at the end of the day, my friend came to the conclusion that maybe her mindset was wrong. She was suspicious of this person. She didn't like the person, but it wasn't necessarily, but it was like, okay, we need to own what's our role in it. But the other thing is, many times we blame other people, and, have we established boundaries for ourselves? People will sometimes treat us the way that we allow ourselves to be treated. So, do we have boundaries? Have we communicated those boundaries? And frankly, there are some times where we are around toxic people, and people that we just need to say, you know what, this is not a good relationship for me to be in. If it's a work relationship, if it's a family type of relationship, it's just like, hey, you know what, I can't be involved in this if we're going to have these kinds of interactions.
Boundaries are important. And when you said that, like, hey, have I set up boundaries, whether it's me or, for example, one of our team members or somebody, it's like the first thing I tell someone when they're onboarding or they're coming onto our team or we're going to start working together, I work 24/7. Maybe I'll have to take my kids to the park, from 4 to 5, but then I'll be back, working later this evening when I get time or whatever. And things that are not urgent between 9 and 5. And I tell my team the same thing, like work when you're available. Things between 9 and 5, you got to do between 9 and 5. The rest, I don't care. It's results orientated for me. And I'm the same way, but I'm like, if I email you at 11:30, midnight, or if I email you, for example, the podcast, I'm doing a lot of work on Saturdays and Sundays because we're going through the podcast production because they come out every Monday. So every now and then I'll see email from work or it's like, oh crap, I forgot to send this. I'll send this out. And I make sure everybody's absolutely clear. Hey, just because I email you at that time, okay, it's in your inbox so that you can tackle it when you get back to work on Monday. You don't have to jump and answer it now. Some people understand that. Some people don't understand that, it seems, and they're not a huge fan of it. But what's your take with that type of boundary?
Well, it's the same kind of thing. I think it's good that you are clear that, look, I may send this to you to get it off my plate or to make sure it's available for you when you start. And so you're making it clear that the person, you're not expecting them to respond. At the same time, I can imagine that just by virtue of the fact that it's there for some people makes them feel like, geez, I want to impress David. I want David to know that I'm working and I'm conscientious and I'm going to pick this up. So I can imagine that it puts pressure on people.
I mean, there are some times where it's like, okay, salespeople, I give you a lot of flexibility, okay? But that flexibility comes at a cost. If I get a lead you got to remember, we're covering East Coast to West Coast. And, right now I don't have someone specifically in the West Coast. So if I get a lead at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we plan on hiring them in the second half of this year, someone out in, SoCal area, someplace like that. So if I get a lead at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and they're out in SoCal, like that's a small business owner that's the best time to talk to them. I expect you to call them that time, or if it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, but that is rare. I mean, it's not like it's an everyday occurrence. Over the last 4 months, I think there was one time that we got 2 leads on a weekend. Both sales reps picked up the phone, got right through to the business owner, and those deals are in the pipeline being worked as we speak. And that was actually, it reflected well upon us because it let them know, like, hey, we take your business seriously.
Yeah, well, so in that example, a boundary would mean that if the person on your team is okay with that and they understand that comes with the territory, hey, I'm in a job where I'm expected to respond to this. If they're okay with that, that's great. Now, if on the other hand, they say, it's my time after 6 or whatever, and I'm not going to do that. And then maybe there's not an alignment on vision in terms of what the job should be. And that's okay. That's okay that so you know what? Doesn't make you a bad person. Just means maybe this isn't the right fit. We need to find you a job someplace where you can have the work-life balance that you need. And unfortunately, this isn't it. So, but that's a benefit of, I think, boundaries, because it avoids the difficult situation because people understand each other and they're transparent.
There's clear communication. It is transparent that I expect this out of you when this occasion arises. And in return, you're able to do this, this, and this.
That's right. And the problem often occurs, well, it can occur in 2 ways. Number one is if say that hadn't been communicated up front, and now you're talking to someone and they communicate to you their boundaries, say, David, I can't work. Number one, maybe they feel that they don't communicate it. So now they're working late and they're upset and they're frustrated. This David's a jerk. He's making me work after 6 and all these different things. Okay, but are you the difficult person if they haven't communicated that boundary? That's what's the responsibility that I have to communicate now? And after that, once it's communicated, then you can make a decision mutually. But that's why I think, sometimes, we think about the people who annoy us, the people who get under our skin, whatever it is, we need to first, taking command doesn't just mean I'm going to blame them 100%. They may be at fault in the particular case, but I'm going to start with, hey, what's my responsibility here? Is there something I need to do to change this up? And maybe that means I need to get out of the relationship.
Right. And that's definitely a spot that me personally, I try to think at like, okay, let me put myself in their shoes and let me see if there's something maybe I should have done differently, or if I should have approached it differently. And then I'm a big believer in that if you are at fault, whether it's with one of your employees or even a customer, fall on your own sword, let the truth shall set you free is what I believe. And, you just fall on your sword, you take the blame, eat it up, and, hey, I'm sorry, won't happen again. Now I'm clear as far as that boundary goes, and then you move forward.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. And it's interesting. We've done global research on employee engagement. And one of the number one things that causes a person to be disengaged from a supervisor is the supervisor doesn't admit when they make a mistake. They don't own the mistake that they make. They might blame somebody else or shift responsibility. But it takes, I think, humility to understand, hey, look, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. And, but people will evaluate us based on sometimes not the mistake. Yes, we've got to be aware of the mistakes that we're making, but it's often, all right, well, look, I made this mistake. Here's how I'm going to fix it. Here's how I'm going to make sure it's not going to happen again, and thank you for working with me through this. So, but that's a very important principle, excuse me, that we teach in Dale Carnegie, which is if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Yeah, that's great. It almost sounds like I've taken your course already, halfway at least.
Yeah, maybe you've gotten it through osmosis or something like that. But it's not too late to take the whole thing. So anytime you want, you could.
Definitely. But that's the big thing to me. Just admitting that you're at fault, and I'll be the first one in line to admit when I'm at fault, even if it is embarrassing. And it's like, hey, it's true. I messed up, and this is what happened. Now it's like, how do we fix this? And let's just move forward and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So the next topic I wanted to jump into was, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It is a remote world. You had to change your business to be digitally transformed, is the buzzword. Now that we are in a digital landscape, what's some measures that somebody that can do for some effective leadership communication in this type of setting, this type of world?
It's interesting. I gave a webinar yesterday for CEOs on this very topic, which is, how do you communicate? How do you connect? How do you build culture in a remote work environment? And I'd say maybe there's one or two kind of key tips. Number one is that the principles that apply to people and how we feel in the real world, if you will, still apply in the virtual world. People still want to be respected and appreciated and heard and valued and all those kinds of things. What's different is that you often have to be more intentional and more aware of how you're connecting in a virtual thing or a virtual through a screen. But number one is intentional. I think about all the people. I'm not in the office right now. I guess we're mostly remote.
It looks like you're in an office. Are you tricking me, Joe?
This is a tremendous Zoom background. Thank God for Zoom backgrounds. So, when I was in the office, I would pass by all kinds of people and have conversation, understand how they're doing. And now, I've got to be very deliberate just to reach out and say, how's it going? What's going on? How's it going with your work? How's it going with your family? I think about how I communicate. I think about the frequency of communication, the kind of communication, how am I transparent as much as possible with what's going on in the business? So, but a CEO and a leader of a team, whether it's a manager or whomever it is, really, you need to think about the team. And also, we think about this principle of try honestly to see things from another person's point of view. This level of empathy, which understands, look, Dave just had back surgery. Dave, how are you? Your back are you doing okay? And is there anything, is there anything I can do to help you as your boss? You need to take, rest throughout the day. How are you doing? But, people, there's this great quote, which is that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's especially true, I think, when you're not seeing people in the office all the time. If I'm going to connect with you, I want to make sure I'm thanking you and appreciating and listening to you and understanding. And as leaders, our job is to get results. You were talking about your pipeline. It's like, look, I'm going to support you. and we still have to get results. So how do we help do that? And that's really what makes leadership so special. Is it's about, if I could bring the best out in other people so we can accomplish things together.
Yeah. Solid advice. And I 100% agree with everything that you said. And I want to jump into one last topic before you can tell us about your book, which is leading and managing a multi-generational workforce. I mean, we have boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, or Zennials, as I identify as. And then you have Gen Z now in the workforce as well. And, that's what, four solid generations there that are working. How do you manage that? Because I mean, that's super diverse. And, even my team, cross between probably like the boomer, Gen Xers, millennial, and the youngest person is probably on the cusp of being a young millennial or an older Gen Zer. I'm not 100% sure, but it's around that.
Yeah, the issue of this generational interaction is one I hear it all over the world. It's not just in the U.S. And what people have found is that the differences in how people see things based on their generation. Even sometimes, you were talking about millennials versus Gen Z. You can have differences in a period of 5 or 10 years of difference that are very So this then goes back to some of these underlying Dale Carnegie principles, which are I'm going to try to see things from your point of view. I'm going to try to understand that rather than just judge and criticize and be like, oh, why is that? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, hold on a second. So why is David, tell me why you're doing it that way. How are you seeing things? What is your thought process about, this? Hey, I think we should do this, the project this way. All right, well, that might be a really good way to do it. Tell me more about that, versus saying that's just not going to work. We have a story in the book about a boomer and a millennial who are talking about, how to do something. And this is a manual kind of thing. And the millennial says, well, you should use a manual screwdriver. And the boomer says, well, that's because your generation is lazy. And the millennial says, or we're just more efficient. So you have like this head butting. And then, they ultimately apologize to each other and say, all right, what can I learn from? So the Burma's view was, hey, look, I just want to be very conscientious about how I'm doing my job. The millennial wants to be conscientious too, but it's like, hey, there might be a way that we could do this faster and get more done. So, but by that dialogue and not just kind of, and this is the problem. I think we've got such a problem in our world with these polarized opinions. And it's like, can we really just try to give each other a little chance at dialogue and understanding? And if we do, we may find that we've got a lot more in common than we think.
Yeah. I 100% absolutely agree with that. And one of my techniques is I usually will tell the sales rep what I would do in their situation. Okay. Like, okay, this is your deal. You're running with it. You're the quarterback of it. This is what I would do. And then I did not expect them to go out there and do exactly what I would do. I expect them to think about it, put that with their strategy, and come up with some kind of mix that's probably in the middle, or maybe it's even slanted more towards what I was going to do. But they do it in their flavor, because that's one thing I've had to accept as a leader, is that not everybody can be me. And not everybody can do what I can do. It's not in their skill set. It's not in their character. And therefore, accepting them how they are, who they are, and telling them how I do it, and let them repackage it to make it their way, as long as they hit those core key points on.
Yeah, I mean, that demonstrates respect for the other person. And certainly, as adults, we all want autonomy. We want to, be a chance to do things our way. And I think our job as leaders is ultimately it's to coach and to try to bring out the best in other people. And we also have to achieve the results that are going to drive the business forward. So at the end of the day, if we're nurturing, which is good, and we don't get the results that we need, well, that's not so good. So how do we support and get the results that we need and create accountability.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, this has been awesome. I've had fun. Hopefully you have.
Yeah, it's been great conversation. Thank you.
So please tell us about your book, the co-author of the book, and where we can find out more about Dale Carnegie and also Joe Hart.
Well, thank you for asking. I'll just answer that last part about Dale Carnegie. DaleCarnegie.com. We've got a ton of resources if people want to take a Dale Carnegie program, online or in person. They can go to DaleCarnegie.com. We've got white papers, free golden book, which is, I've got this hard copy here, but a golden book is the 60 principles that we teach in Dale Carnegie, so they can download that. Podcast, there's a lot of information that's there. For the Take Command book, I mean, this book, again, this is, we want to introduce people to these principles that we think can help really advance and accelerate their lives so that they're, fulfilled and achieving the things that they want to achieve, living the life that they want to live. They can go to takecommand.com to learn more about the book. We actually have a sale on the book right now. In fact, we have a collaboration with Marshall Goldsmith. So if you buy a hardcover book, you've got to buy a certain number of books, but you get a free copies of Marshall Goldsmith's book, The Earned Life, as well. In terms of me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and on Twitter. So it's both handles are the same. It's at Joseph K. Hart. It's for LinkedIn and Twitter. So, but
are you a Twitter troll?
I like Twitter. I've gotten more into Twitter probably, more recently than in the past.
Same here.
It's funny because I never really had much use for it, but now as I go into it, I'm finding it fascinating and fun. So it's been more valuable.
As much as people have complained about it with Elon taking it over, as someone that has been a longtime Twitter user, I find the topics that are trending, the conversations, you're going to have trolls that spew hateful stuff on both sides, but I don't know. I like it better. I mean, does he do dumb things sometimes? Yeah, but he also said, hey, we're going to do dumb things over the next year or so as we try to figure this out and make it better. It's not going to be perfect. It's basically almost back to a beta version again, but I've used it more and more. And even with this podcast, putting out clips and stuff like that for our weekly promotional videos, it's been a tremendous resource for us.
Yeah, we've done the same thing, and I've used it around the book. And I frankly, the people that I follow, a lot of them really have great thoughts, and those are thoughts that sometimes I'll see something or someone will post a video or an idea. I'm like, you know what? That's really something. It might be around kindness. It might be around something that's innovative. I'm following different people who are talking about AI.
Oh,
and I'm getting some really good insights. And I'm thinking about AI as I'm leading this business. How's it going to affect our business? What do we need to be doing proactively and so forth? So, it's been a good resource, and I'm looking forward to leveraging it more.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, hey, Joe, thank you so much for coming on, sharing about Dale Carnegie as well as your book, Take Command. We will have links down below in the description. Please check out Take Command, get the special offer Joe had mentioned. Joe, again, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you, David. Great to be with you and continue your great work.
Thank you, sir. Cheers. Wow, that was an incredible chat with Joe, right? First off, I am so honored to have Joe Hart on this show, because having somebody representing the CEO of Dale Carnegie, who essentially embodies and represents what Dale Carnegie was and still is today in the minds of people. I mean, that's an honor to be in business and to talk to one of the brightest minds in business, in, personal growth, professional growth, business growth. That to me was mind blowing. And it was such an honor to be able to interview somebody of that stature. So, hey, thank you so much, Joe. That was incredible. First, though, you all know the routine. If you found this interview helpful, if it sparked those warm and fuzzies, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. But if you really want to help us out, because Shark Bite Biz is the greatest kept secret in the world of small business, please share us out to your friends, your family, your colleagues, anywhere that you dwell on the interwebs. I don't care if it's the new threads.net app that Meta has, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Mastodon. I don't care. I would just love to see nothing more than Joe Hart Dale Carnegie, Shark Bite Biz, out there trending, and people learning something from these interviews that we do each and every week. Now, let's get back to the real rock star of this show, Mr. Joe Hart, okay? That was an amazing discussion about taking command of your future and your career. Joe's origin story about how he landed on the job, yeah, it's a little bit longer of an intro than we have with many of our other guests that are a little bit brief, but that was an important story because he really went full circle from, having to read about Dale Carnegie, courses and books and stuff like that when he was younger to actually being the CEO of Dale Carnegie later in life. It's one of those interesting twists and turns that life just throws at people to really, again, to make things go full circle. It's one of those unpredictable things to where it's like, it's hard to explain. I mean, it's related, but it's indirectly related. And it's just weird sometimes how life lines us up for the right situation in our careers. But that only happens if you do something like taking command of your life and taking the appropriate steps to make sure you land in that position that you need to be. And that's one of the reasons why I always preach on this show, okay? I've said it from the beginning. I still say it now. One eye on the present. Think about the now. You need to pay your bills now. But you also need to have one eye on the future. You need to be thinking about what you're going to do in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because the decisions you make today will directly impact how far or how short you are of where you wanted to be in that length of time. Anyways, talking with Joe, I mean, really, I really love talking with him on some of the topics that we discussed, like living an intentional life. That, to me, has a lot of meaning. And, something else, another topic that we discussed during the interview that I found to be fun was where we were talking about something that we all suffer from, which is winning over difficult people. It's not always the easiest thing to do, and sometimes you have to placate some people in order to win them over. But when you do win them over, life is so much easier and work is so much more fun. So anyways, awesome stuff, Joe. Thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise, and keeping the legacy and teachings of Dale Carnegie alive and well. They are in good hands with you, my friend. Please grab the book that Joe co-authored with Michael Crom called Take Command. Thank you so much for sending me out a little signed copy of this book. I'm very honored to have it. And now that I've officially recorded this episode, I will be reading the book from front to back, every single page of the book, and will absorb everything that comes in there because, again, it's a wealth of knowledge built off of Dale Carnegie's methodologies and his teachings. So, question of the day. How does Dale Carnegie's teachings apply to modern day business? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Leave a comment down below on YouTube or on Spotify. Do you want to be on the show? We are scheduling for the end of season 7 and season 8 right now. Interviews at sharkbitebiz.com. Also, please, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you go to our Spotify channel, not only subscribe, but you can join the channel. $3 a month. You can become a baby shark. Every dollar that comes in is every dollar I put out on ads, on production, on everything we can. I don't make money from the show. I don't need money from the show, but I do want the show to pay for itself and get as much exposure as possible. Lastly, one final shout out to our sponsor, the SAP Platinum Partner, Seidor. Again, that's SEIDOR. If If you're on QuickBooks or some kind of legacy, antiquated, homebrew type system, MAS 90, for example, it's time to get off that. Let's automate your business processes. Let's get things less manual. Let's get things more streamlined. Reach out to me personally, david@sharkbitebiz.com, or go to sador.com. Let them know that you saw us on Shark Bite Biz, and we'll make sure that we take care of you. You all know this by now, but I'll say it once again. I'm David Strausser. This is Shark Bite Biz. We'll see you all next episode. Ciao.
You just experienced Shark Bite Biz with David Strausser. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the show to help us spread the word about personal, professional, and business growth. Want to be on the show? Send an email to interviews@sharkbitebiz.com. A special shout out to our sponsor, SAP Platinum Partner, Sador. Get off QuickBooks and move your business to the next level. Reach out for more info. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.